G'day. I reckon there's 101 different ways to go mad practicing meditation. Uh, I'm a long-term meditator, which, has some credibility about it. And I can give you my long-term perceptions on things. And I don't meet many people who are actually sane who meditate. And this is a problem, I think. What I think stuffs people up are the philosophies that they believe in. They trust in these historical movements and give them credibility. And they don't necessarily question them deeply enough. Now, I want to discuss some of the pitfalls about meditation and hopefully point people in a useful direction. Uh, Meditation, as I understand it, is something which should lead you to sanity. Now, to get to the bottom line, there are lots of different ways I might try and explain meditation, and most of those might be useful. But not every explanation of meditation is pertinent to the needs of the day. Now, I live in a Western culture and I see a lot of mental disruption in people around me. And I spend a lot of time trying to understand, well, what's going on? Why are so many people basically mentally disturbed? And what could possibly be done about it? Now, that's how I understand what's useful about meditation in today's world. And that's why I present it in terms of understanding our emotions. Because what I came to see, I think very clearly, is that people are disconnected, functionally disconnected from their emotions in this world, at least in our Western culture. There's a lot of people carrying around sublimated emotional experience. And that destroys their capacity for appreciating life. And it's essentially why so many people are unhappy. And instead of being aware of these things within themselves, they compensate themselves. And people compensate themselves with making money or uh, sex or drugs or, and this just makes the problems worse. Now, before I sort of get into explaining that, I'm going to pick apart a few things that I think are troubling. Let's just say troubling about uh, these traditions. There's a lot of these meditation techniques, right, that are offered. Well, they all do something. I mean, people wouldn't do them if they didn't get some kind of result. And a lot of those results are quite unusual, out of the normal experiential range that people have. And that's a problem because people then assume all kinds of, well, they interpret these things to mean things which they don't. And this is how people start to go mad. They don't necessarily have a rational um, understanding of things. They have some pre-cooked interpretation which is offered to them. And, you know, that's not uh, that's not seeing life as it is. That's just swapping one set of delusions for another. Uh, you shouldn't be surprised if you lock yourself up in a darkened room and spend multiple hours practicing some extravagant technique, that you get some kind of um, you know, bizarre result from it. You know, that shouldn't be a surprising outcome. And it's unwise to, pin your life to some extravagant experience that you interpret as um, spiritual growth or understanding. It's just a bloody experience, for fuck's sake. Um, People hallucinate. They see lights. They have feelings of energy in the body. All those things can occur with a fairly dedicated period of meditation practice. Uh, well, you know, don't be surprised about it, and don't be foolish enough to think it's some kind of signpost you're on some kind of high, heading to some kind of higher dimension. You're kidding yourself. But these experiences are what fuel these various traditions. The fact that you do have these experiences, um, people imagine that they mean something, and 99% of the time, what those experiences mean is you stressed your internal self, and you started to you know, experience hallucination or some kind of stress event. Um, this is what people imagine as meditation, and it's just madness, really. Um, and when it's backed up with some kind of belief that following you know, the Buddha's path or some Taoist path or some other religious path, and that these are confirmationary experiences that leading you somewhere. Well, that then you become a dogmatic, you know, closed-mind individual, and I see it a lot. And meanwhile, people are all around you are dysfunctional, and you're probably one of them as well. And the real world is the one we actually live in. You wake up to in the morning, and you have to deal with. You know, the real problems are about seeing things as they are, and facing up to them, and being able to do that and maintain mental stability. And meditation, the real thing, facilitates that. Um, Someone can report to you they've had some extravagant experience. Well, what does that matter to you? What does someone else's experience matter to you? What really matters to you is what your experience of life is, and how untroubled it is a measure of how successful it might be. Um, there's, it's very, it's just an unhappy situation when you've got people uh, promoting their beliefs, and it's as common as muck, actually, for people to have extravagant experiences while meditating. It's just not unusual. What is unusual is somebody maintains a rational um, um, reaction to it. There's the very first thing that you want to achieve, if you're going to understand yourself, is to be emotionally stable. That your reactions to things are actually relevant and functional, to the experiences that you have. Uh, you know, people are immersed in all kinds of beliefs, and look, just to be honest with you, most people are just fucking mad, and you don't want to be one of them, right? Now, yeah. So look, where the emphasis that I've placed on meditation, right? First off, I was trying to strip it down to its fundamentals. I've done my best to explain it in a way that strips it of all the gobbledygook. Uh, it's actually quite a simple thing and easily explained, actually. The most natural thing in the world is to understand yourself. And all these complicated beliefs don't help. The basic principle underlying the effort to understand yourself is to not repress things and just allow things to occur and to explore them, with your intellect. You and the simplest way to go about that is to relax and remain alert. Now, that's the basic requirement. Um, all these extravagant, meditation practices and the philosophies that are attached to them, well, there have been a lot of mad people in this world down through history. And like today, there are plenty of public gurus out there that if you really have a good look at them, it's obvious they've gone over some kind of edge. But they get a following, right? They influence people. And after they've died, institutions remain and people, the longer it's been around, the more people think it's real. Now, there are a lot of assumptions that people make, and I'm going to use Buddhism as an example, but it applies across the board. Okay, so the propaganda is the Buddha was enlightened. Well, how do you really know that? Certainly the guy had an influence on the population at the time, and he certainly seems to have had something that people wanted to hear that was useful, right? But what's this thing about enlightened? That's an assumption. Um, we know that he had interesting things to say, but when you really go into the history of Buddhism, um, within a few hundred years there were 18 different schools of Buddhism. But now I don't know how many there are, and they're so different to each other. What if the Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, was born now? Would he become a Buddhist? Which one would he choose? Would he even recognise any of them as what he was talking about? I mean, if there are so many, picking up Buddhism, if there are so many Buddhist schools around, how come there's so few enlightened people about the place? What's wrong? Well, I tell you that there's been a history of basically mad people, trying to improve and be special. Once you've got an institution and a hierarchy and um, important people and less important people and all the rest of it, you get politics, right? And you get people wanting to be at the top of the tree. Well, one way to attract attention is to say something really bloody weird, something which you get a following, and bingo, you're suddenly an important person. I don't know how many of you who listen to me have researched into some of the history of these things, but there are some very famous individuals who've got their texts that they wrote, some of them copious, well, complex, and basically meaningless. I challenge anybody to actually make sense of any of it. I've tried. Now, maybe I'm a stupid person, but to me, if something doesn't make sense, then I'm prepared to call it nonsense. And a lot of this stuff that passes as meditation is just straight out nonsense. Now, there are some meditation experiences which possibly represent some kind of transformation. But let's be honest about that too. Very few people actually put in the years and years and years of practice that they experience some of these deeper things. The average person's never going to put in that kind of effort. You know, yeah. The average person's busy with their own life 9 to 5, trying to make ends meet. They don't have much time for a life of meditation. So what can meditation offer those people? I think there's a simple approach, and that is, when you get the opportunity, just relax and remain mentally alert. And what will happen? I mean, I'm offering this thing as meditation in 7 words. Close your eyes, relax, and stay awake. Right. Okay. Well, when you close your eyes, you maximize the internal experience. You relax. Well, there's a lot to learn about being relaxed. The more relaxed you are, the better. And that allows for the subconscious to become more conscious, because a lot of the subconsciously held things in your body are held as a permanent tension in the body, which frequently you don't even realize it's happening. And stay awake, well, it's just mental alertness, which is the most natural thing in the world. It doesn't have to be forced. In fact, it's kind of ridiculous to think you can maximize your attention. You can minimize your attention by being distracted. Now, what I'm trying to explain to people is that this is kind of the natural way to go about things, and the result that you get is you become more conscious of how you operate. Some of the subliminal thinking becomes more consciously aware to you, alive to you. Some of the things in your past that troubled you they resolve. Now, that's what I think is important today in our world. Now, meditation is a deeper thing than that. That's the therapeutic side of things, which I think most people could get a lot of benefit from, leading to being less irrational and emotionally more alive to themselves and more alive to other people's emotions and more stable. Right? Now, if there's a deeper understanding to be had, well, then you're well equipped to deal with those things because of the emotional stability that you developed. Now, I'm not a fan of all these traditions. I can see how people train themselves into thinking along the lines of these different traditions. And they imagine, because they believe that they're on some kind of path. They imagine that this self-training is leading somewhere. Well, no, all they're doing is conditioning their mind in a different way. And it's just another mental trap that people fall into. It's not self-understanding in any real sense. Real self-understanding, you can't really explain it in words. It's kind of past that. It's deeper than that. And I think there's a great deal of misfortune in the world that these religions and philosophies impose themselves on people, and people believe all kinds of things which aren't provable, and it gets in the way of something real. So, look, I don't know how many people are interested in what I've got to say, but I'm saying it anyway. So, we'll see you later.